I mean, hold on. I just at least have to read it one time. I just really want to make sure I give myself enough time for the Cain and Abel stuff, you know? I could dangerously get there and be like, crap, I've got 8 minutes. Okay, so I'm going to try to try to get there quickly. Oh, do I need anything that I'm a card? Not that I don't. We don't have it, so I mean, I guess I. So kind of end with like, are you with so Roosevelt? Like, are you gonna do the right thing? Yeah, something like that. Okay. Sure. Well, welcome everybody. We are in a series dealing with the stuff that's going on up here. So I don't know what kind of a week you've had. I don't know if it's been good, bad, if it's been full of stress, anxiety, or just peace. It's been good. All of us, all our locations are leaning into making sure that our mind is able to love God the way He even designed us to love Him. And so, fellows at RCMU, East, West, everyone online, let's go after this. And I want to bring up something that I think you're familiar with called Battle of Wills. You're familiar with this. This is when two people have a disagreement about what they want to do or even an idea. And they both are refusing to give any ground, to change their minds. Okay. If you've ever had a brother or a sister, a sibling of some sort, you know exactly what the battle of wills is, where you wanted something, they wanted something, whether it be temperature, music, the side of the car you're sitting on, and boom, boom. At workplace, come on, where we work, there's typically moments, maybe you're in a meeting, or the way someone is working and you work alongside, battle of wills. And can we just go there that if you've ever had a kid in your home for 5 minutes, you realize that there can be this battle of wills where the 5-year-old and you are standing your ground, not moving. Battle of wills is common, it's normal, but I want you to take this further. I want you to understand how far this goes, because here's what I'll tell you. if any of those situations are true for you or not, every single day, you and I have what I would call a battle of wills. There are two competing thoughts, ideas, even desires. Let me show you. This is what's going on in most of our minds. What I should do versus what I feel like doing. Does anyone resonate with this? Where you're like, I know, discipline, right? You want to, I know what I should do, but frankly, there's a lot of those times where I don't feel like it. Whether it's diet related or you're like, I know I shouldn't respond to that person that way, but I feel like saying such and such. This is a battle of wills. And frankly, if you choose the wrong one, it gets very dangerous. It gets sometimes catastrophic in your world and mine when you choose to simply just say, I'm going to do what I feel like doing all the time. Now, yes, it's dangerous and very common. Let me show you something. This is in the Bible. And a lot of times when you read the Bible, some of us are like, it just doesn't feel like it's my life. This should feel like your life. I have discovered this principle of life that when I want to do what is right, I inevitably do what is wrong. Amen? No amens? All right, just me. Okay. I love God's law with all my heart. Okay? But there is another power within me that is at war with my mind. This power makes me a slave to the sin that is still within me. This battle of wills where you're like, I want to do this. This is good. But then your mind has all of these emotions, these feelings where you're like, yeah, I don't feel like doing that. I know that's right. And these feelings sometimes, well, these feelings have a tendency to talk to us really loudly up here. You and I have this all the time, every day, I would say. And I wonder something about you, and I wondered about me. In fact, I want to ask you something that this is like peel back the layers kind of a question. This is somewhat painful at the beginning, but beneficial in the long run. About what do I do with, I feel like doing this, but I shouldn't do this. Let me lean in. Do you rule your feelings? Or do they rule you? Stay here. Do you rule your feelings? Do you actually, when you have this feeling and you're like, I know I shouldn't do that. I know I shouldn't indulge that, say that, behave that way, withdraw like that. Even though or when you feel it, do your feelings have this power over you? While you're thinking that, let me tell you a story about the Olympics. So a journalist went to interview the sports psychologist at one of the U.S. Olympic training centers. And in this place, I mean, if you don't know much about the Olympics, I'm not saying I'm not professional, but they not only go to this to be trained and to go through all of this, to physically like be able to do what they're supposed to do, right? Or what they want to do. But there's a psychologist there, a full-time paid psychologist that works with the athletes right when they show up. And the journalists began to talk to the psychologist because it was just interesting about what the job was like and what they were doing. And most Olympic athletes, most of them show up like only thinking about the gold, right? Frankly, that's when you and I watch the Olympics, that's pretty much what you and I are thinking about, hoping that we win the gold in everything possible. Well, when the psychologist was being interviewed, we're talking about, so like, do you push these athletes, like, you got to get the gold, you got to get the gold, you got to get the gold? The psychologist unfolded a completely different approach that I think matters to you and I in this conversation about the mind. The psychologist said the athletes are allowed to show up being totally consumed with gold. But as soon as they show up, the conversation changes. They're not supposed to talk about the gold anymore. They're not supposed to dwell on the gold. In fact, the gold medal, by the way, is this outcome, right? They do the race, they win their event, and they get a medal, right? That's an outcome. The psychologist says, no. We drop the focus off of outcome, and we put it entirely on execution. To where when an athlete shows up, no longer is it about the gold. Listen, it's now about, did you leave the starting line as you should have left it? Which foot did you lead with? And we're going to practice over and over and over again. We're not talking about gold. We're talking about, did your right foot come off in the direction and at the speed, the execution of it, like you said, the swimmer, did your right arm come forward in the direction and the speed? We're going to go over and over again. We're going to practice this over and over and over again. In volleyball, did you set that ball right? We're not trying to win gold. We're trying to execute the perfect set. Execution, not the outcome. Now, some of you are like, well, that sounds good. You know why? Because if you're all about the outcome, if you're all just dreaming about the outcome, your feelings become very powerful to where you actually become afraid that you might not win the gold. That's why this has to do with our mind. Many of us are so consumed with the outcomes that we crave that our feelings are taking over because we want to feel that win. We want to feel achieving that goal when it's execution that you and I ought to be spending our time on. Execution. Now you're like, what are we supposed to be? What are we supposed to be doing? Well, let me show you. Jesus replied, you must love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your mind. There it is, all your mind. And so we as a church are circling around this conversation for a while because this is the first and greatest commandment. Come on, that's a big deal. So we are circling around this, that our mind, if we're going to love God with our minds, then they got to be healthy. And they're not healthy if your feelings are running your life. If what you feel in the moment, if what feels right or feels wrong to you is what is constantly driving you, if you're going with just your craving, you're not going to do this well, and your mind is going to be filled with stuff, anxiety, worry, stress that is completely unnecessary. If you've ever craved, which I think by gathering just in general, this I want to love God well, then you've got to go after, if that being an outcome, how do we execute that? And one of the things that will keep you from ever executing a love for God in a healthy way is that your feelings can get in the way. Now, let me do a disclaimer. I think this is necessary. Feelings aren't bad. Just don't let them run your life. I'm not hating on your feelings. I'm not saying you are not allowed any longer for the rest of your life to feel anything. No, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is they should not be the runner of your life. They should not be this thing where you're like, that's what you're completely dependent on, and that's how you make all of your decisions. No. In fact, if you call yourself a Christian, a follower of Jesus, let me share with you what you committed to, because this is a big deal. My old self has been crucified with Christ. My old self, my old way of thinking, which is by definition, I went after my will, my way, my feelings. My old self has been crucified with Christ. It's gone. It's no longer I who live, but Christ lives in me. So I live in this earthly body by trusting in the Son of God, Jesus, who loved me and gave himself for me. See, many of us, we're claiming this relationship with God. Yeah, I love him, but we're not loving him well. And it's messing things up here. So let's go after here. So Many of us have typical reactions, I would say, with our feelings. We have typical things that we're doing. Okay, I feel this, and here's what we do. One of them is we'll elevate our feelings. I've been talking to you about this already, that we'll actually make them, in essence, king, or we'll crown them. But let me show you the underneath stuff that your feelings aren't going to tell you. When you elevate your feelings, self-control becomes low. Your ability to say no to what you should say no to and yes to what you should say yes to, it's really difficult because your feelings are leading the way. So you're going based on not what is right and wrong, but what you feel. And so self-control is pretty much out the window. If at every moment you were like, I see the donut, I feel like having a donut. If you let your feelings lead you, you see self-control goes low and selfishness is high. Ooh, way high. If you're right now living a lifestyle where you have elevated your feelings and they are allowed to rule your life, what you're allowing yourself to believe is that you should go after everything you deserve, and that life is actually here in existence for you, about you, and selfishness begins to just creep up. That's why if you have let's call it a difficulty maintaining healthy relationships because your feelings get in the way, then perhaps it's actually a deeper conversation where your selfishness is getting in the way or a lack of self-control. Now, that's not the only response that you and I often. Some of you are like, I don't do that. I don't do that. David, we should just ignore our feelings. No, you shouldn't, because this is what you look like, by the way. You know, the ostrich putting his head in the sand, like pretending like nothing is going on in the outside normal world, right? And some of us, this is what you're doing. This is how you're attempting to manage your feelings that you really have. You ignore them. No, they don't even happen. They're not here. No, I'm not feeling that. I'm not going to talk about that. Here's what happens if you ignore your feelings. Self-esteem goes low because you are feeling all of this and not able to express and talk about and process what's going on. And so you begin to believe some of this internalized stuff and makes your self-esteem go pretty low, where you start to think things about yourself that are not true if you ignore your feelings. If you completely say, no, because you'll start to say, I shouldn't think this, I shouldn't think this, I shouldn't think this, and your self-esteem goes low. And sadness is high the longer you do this. Because that's not the life God intended for you. God did not create you and put you into this world in a way to say, I want you to live with your head in the sand. But he also didn't create you to let your feelings rule your life. So what do we do with these incredible feelings that you and I are processing all the time up here? Here's what you do. Lead your feelings with your actions. Can I just bring up something you probably already know, but I just think it's worth in our time together for me to bring it up. Many of us are waiting to feel what we should feel before we act. Many of us are actually relying on this concept, and we get it from different people, or maybe you just make it up in your mind. You're like, hey, when I'm ready and feeling, when I have the emotions lining up with what I want to do, then I'll go act out. I'll go do what I'm supposed to do, and we're waiting. Many of us right now are simply paused. We're paused, and we're quitting, or we're just waiting because we don't feel it yet. I would tell you, if you don't feel it, okay, then with your actions, lead your feelings. Let me go back to the Olympics. Perhaps the most decorated Olympian of all time, Michael Phelps. Most of us are familiar. If you don't know, lots of medals. I believe 28 medals, and I mean it's insane. And he's well known and almost idolized in the Olympic world. But what I found was interesting is his coach got interviewed. Coach Bowman is his name. He got interviewed, and I mean, they're curious. Like, so you're coaching this, I mean, elite athlete, this record-breaking, perhaps some would say best of all time Olympians. Like, What's it like? What do you do? And he brought something up that I thought is radically significant for you and I. He goes, I can tell you about Michael Phelps. He's different. He's different because he swims even when he doesn't feel like swimming. Don't bypass the simplicity of that. He goes, I've coached other athletes, and when they didn't feel good in the morning, or they had a lot of sponsor meetings, or they just were sore, they would pause the workouts. They wouldn't do the work. They didn't feel like it. He goes, Michael Phelps, whether he felt like it or not, got into the pool and did his workouts. In fact, Michael Phelps would build his life around the workouts, where he didn't take days off. He did all the other important stuff, sponsorship stuff, meetings, planning. The workout was not like if it fits or if he felt like it. That's what the coach says. And I think you and I have something. That means that Michael Phelps was regularly sacrificing things. He was regularly saying, no, not right now. I'm going to do without that. And Michael Phelps teaches us something about what's going on in our minds. Here's what I would tell you. Sacrifice is the action your mind desperately needs. You don't need to raise your hand, but if right now you feel disconnected from God, and when I read up stuff about God, and you're like, oh, okay, that sounds neat, yeah, I don't feel it. Or maybe it's not just related to God. Maybe it's your marriage or your relationship with your kids or a work thing, but it's a relationship oriented, and your mind is like consumed. It's confused. There's a lot going on. You're like, what are some tactical, practical things that I do to get my mind back on track? Sacrifice is the action that your mind desperately needs. I would flip it, actually. If you need it flipped, I'll flip it for you. That if you have chosen to not sacrifice in your life, you're likely finding yourself with a mind that's confused about what is best, what truly is satisfying in life. If you've ever found yourself indulging in things and found out it's just not doing it for you anymore, sacrifice is the action your mind desperately needs. Don't forget what we're going after. Okay. Refresher time. Jesus replied, you must love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, all your mind. If you're going to love God with all of you, absolutely everything, if you're going to actually pour into that true relationship, if you want to not fake it, not religion, if you're like, David, I want this authentic relationship with the Creator who made me, if you really want it, and you don't want to fake it, sacrifice is what you desperately need. There must be sacrifice between you and God. And if there isn't, I would suggest that is the potential breakdown between you and God right now. In fact, I want to bring you into a story that I find personally incredibly powerful. If you don't know your story or how history plays out, Adam and Eve were the first two here on planet Earth. Adam and Eve eventually added kids to the mix. Cain and Abel. These two guys, they grew up, but they ran into an issue that I think you and I run into. Would you be willing to have your mind open to this? Would you be willing to lean into the Bible, to lean into something that happened early on in the history of mankind and say, maybe what happened then is happening to me too? So these two kids, let me bring you into the story. When they grew up, Abel became a shepherd while Cain cultivated the ground. When it was time for the harvest, Cain presented some of his crops as a gift to the Lord. Abel also brought a gift, the best portions of the firstborn lambs from his flock. The Lord accepted Abel and his gift, and this will mess with some of you have got, but he did not accept Cain and his gift. This made Cain very angry, and he looked dejected. Let's walk through this. Let's start at the beginning. So you've got Abel, who is a shepherd, and Cain, who cultivated the ground. Let me help you. Abel is a shepherd. Got that? Cain is basically a farmer, right? You got that? This is important. This is important because, why is this in the Bible? Why not, all the things you include in the Bible, the beginning of mankind, why are we including, their jobs? Well, because that was their means of survival. That was their means of survival. And so Abel, to survive on planet Earth, he became a shepherd. He raised animals. Cain raised crops. So he could survive. Don't miss that, because I want you thinking about what's your means of survival, and what are you doing with it? If you keep reading, you're going to land into the gifts. Cain presented some. Abel brought the best. Don't miss this. Some, best. This is a big deal. Because one of them brought some, and that word's on purpose. That means so I've got some of this, I got some left over here, or this is, I'll get, and they brought some to God. Now some of you are like, wait a minute, where are they bringing, they're bringing it to God? Because they loved God. There's a genuine understanding that we can't love God without sacrificing for God. There's got to be sacrifice. Some of us are like, well, I don't sacrifice for God. God has everything he needs. That's not how relationships work. All relationships, no matter how wealthy or poor you are, require sacrifice. Cain and Abel understood this. And so they're going to bring a gift. They're going to sacrifice for God. The problem is one of them brought the best. One of them brought some. Let me help you keep reading on this. So the Lord accepted the best. He did not accept the some. I think some of you right now, your view of God might be getting jacked up as we speak. Where you're like, wait a minute. So God doesn't receive absolutely every single gift we give him, no matter what it is. In fact, let me lean into your life. Do you give God the best of what you have? Or some of what you have? If you want to know why I'm asking this question, I'm asking it because your mind needs an answer, and there is a right answer. You know there's a right answer, by the way. Do you give God the best of what you have or some of what you have? Many of us have not been treating God like he's real. So let me walk you into a real situation. Here's the situation. Kids were presented with a bit of a quandary. The quandary was this. It was Christmas time, and they had said, here's what I want for Christmas. And then the interviewer said, okay, that's cool. What would your family like for Christmas too? And they distributed the list, and they said, okay, here's what I want, and here's what my mom or my dad or my family would want for Christmas. And what's cool is they put a camera, and they interviewed them, and you and I get to see what plays out as they ask the kids, what do you want? And then they are given a bit of a decision to make. Take a look.
This year for Christmas, what are you hoping to get?
A computer. Big, giant Barbie house.
A trophy case.
Xbox 360. Minecraft Legos.
What do you think your mom or dad want for Christmas?
My mom would probably want a ring. She's never really had a ring.
Jewelry. She loves jewelry. A new TV. My watches.
So, we actually did buy an Xbox 360.
What in the world? What is this? Okay, you really got this for me?
A new laptop.
Wow.
And
It's a necklace.
so we also bought a necklace because you said you also wanted to get a necklace for your mom or your auntie. The catch is that you can either get a gift for yourself, or you can pick a gift for your mom and dad. I need you to pick one. Now before you answer, oh, I bet that's hard. Is that a really hard question?
Mm-hmm.
What gift do you pick?
I choose this.
I gotta go with the ring.
What gift do you pick?
That one. That one. That dress. I'll choose this for my mom.
I'll choose this one.
It's a really tough question,
I'll
but
give him this
you already know? Tell me why.
because Legos don't matter. Your family matters. Not Legos, not toys, your family. So it's either family or Legos, and I choose family. I get gifts every year from my family, and my mom don't get anything. If I get a laptop, my mom will get something. She helps me when I'm sick. She helps me with my homework. She gave me a house to live in.
They look out for me and do stuff for me, so I need to give back to them.
Now I have the opportunity to give him something.
Because you actually picked the gift for your family, you're actually gonna go home with both. Tell me how you're feeling.
I'm feeling really happy and
Why?
thankful.
Just happy, thankful
For your family? For what?
for my family, everything.
He did make his decision, actually. And he picked the Pandora charms.
Oh, that is sweet. You're gonna make me cry. So what are you gonna make me? Oh, it's for me? Oh, it's so cute.
Thanks, guys.
I was trying to.
Do you give God the best of what you have or some of what you have? You need to understand, you and I watch things like this and we're like, that stirs me, that moves me. And you and I find this fascinating. If I talked to you today about giving a gift to someone you loved, you know what you wouldn't do? Cover your face and be like, oh no, he's talking. But when I bring up the idea of investing in a relationship with God, what has been your approach? And I might say this, what your approach has been is it might be indicative of what's happening up here, and how if you want to trust God, you want to love God, but you get all this word, what's he going to do? How's he going to do it? I don't know if I agree with it. And many of us are trying to have a relationship with God by only giving him some of our extra this or that. So what was God's response to these guys where one brings some and one brings the best? You'll be accepted if you do what is right. But if you refuse to do what is right, then watch out. Then watch out. And somebody like, oh, God's going to get you. No. Sin is crouching at the door, eager to control you, But you must subdue it and be its master. In other portions of the Bible, it talks about how you and I could not serve more than one master, referencing money, our means of survival. God was not saying, if you don't give me a gift, I'm going to get you. No, sacrifice to God protects us against some of the sinful stuff that we're flooding our minds and our lives with. God's plan that he started from the very beginning of sacrifice wasn't a how to get rich scheme for God. I mean, come on, let's get over that. It wasn't a get rich scheme for really anything. It was a protection mechanism for you and I, that if you don't want your mind full of regret and shame and all that stuff that you and I, we went after our feelings, we chased our feelings, we leaned in our feelings, and we lost the battle of wills. All of us have been there. Do you need me to have you raise your hand if you've ever lost the battle of wills and you went after your feelings and you gave in? See, God was saying, I want you to do my will, but what's beautiful about this is that when you do God's will, your life actually plays out full and satisfying. See, God knew that if we love him well, that our life here actually plays out fulfilling. And I think you crave that. This makes me think of a very, it's a quote, one of my favorites. It's got to be one of my favorites, from Theodore Roosevelt. In any moment of decision on whether you're going to go after a relationship with God or you're going to be like, nope, this is too offensive to me, or I can't sacrifice. No, if any moment of decision, the best thing you can do is the right thing. The worst thing you can do is nothing. And let me give you full disclosure. Oftentimes when I preach a sermon like this powerful principle in life of giving God from the well of our well-being, like whatever we have in our life, which is typically a paycheck, whatever sustains us and allows us to function, to buy groceries, to pay our bills, that when God says, I want you to give me the best of that, many of us do nothing. Because we say, I can't afford to. You can always afford to. You can always afford sacrifice. This is not about a specific amount. This is about sacrifice. What is truly sacrifice? I can tell you how Katie and I have been living. When we got married, we read the Bible and like, what's God's best? And I can tell you the Bible will tell you that God's best is that you and I take the best of our income, which is the first 10%. Think what you do with the first 10% of any paycheck, you typically give it to what is the most valuable to you. It's the best. Whatever you do with the first of anything is what's most valuable. So Katie and I take the first 10% of any kind of income we give and we sacrifice, we give it to God. We literally go online now and give it to our church. That's how you give to God. We do that. What I'm challenging you to do is to get out of the world of doing nothing. If you want to love God with all of your mind, you've got to be willing to sacrifice for him. The worst thing you can do is nothing. So where are you going to land with this? Take the truth, and may you be able to love God with all your heart, soul, and mind because you begin to sacrifice for him. Let me pray for us. God, what a powerful lesson. What a powerful way to live life. Lord, I pray that you'll open our hearts to it. I imagine a group like us that we're mixed. Some of us are rejecting this and saying no, no, no. And some of us are saying, I can't. Some of us are saying yes. I want to love God with everything. I want my mind to be rid of worry and shame. So yes. So God, for those who are willing to say yes, would you please bless them and provide for them? Would you please lead them as we sacrifice for you? We love you, God. Thank you for this word. We pray this in your name. Amen.